I'm Becky from Icing on Top Becky's Cakes, and you've seen a lot of my tutorials in the past probably about piping roses because I've done a lot of them. I've done how to pipe a rose on a cupcake, how to pipe a rose on a rose nail and remove it, stick it on a cake or something, the giant rose one, and then the roses on the mini cupcakes, which are really cute. So I've done a lot of rose tutorials, and in my tutorials I've done two different tips. They're both 124 tips, but very, very different. And I wanted to go over why they're different, and that way you can decide for yourself which 124 tip you want to use when piping roses. So here we go. We have the Ateco one, which is probably what I use most of the time now for piping roses. And then there's the Wilton 124 one. Now this is the one I use for teaching a lot. And I'll show you why in a second, why I use this one for teaching and this one for more advanced. So take a little peek here. Let me get nice and close. Okay, so notice any differences? They're both 124 tips. Strange, right? But the Ateco is much thinner than the Wilton. Wilton has a more dramatic, thicker shape, and the Ateco has a very slight thinner side since it's all very thin. Now I'm going to use a darker pink and a lighter pink. On the narrow end of the tip, this is the Wilton one. I am going to follow that line, that crease in the bag, and I'm going to take the darkest color and I'm just going to place it right down that seam. And you can use a knife, or I'm using my smallest offset spatula to do this. And then after I smooth down one nice line of the dark buttercream, then I'm gonna go ahead and fill it the rest of the way with the lighter buttercream. Now, you've seen in other tutorials, like my color striping rose tutorials, that I use the gel food coloring to make a dark line, and that just brings out that line a lot more. So that's a fun way of doing it too if you want more of a dramatic look. But we're going for a little more of a subtle line, so we're just going to put in the buttercream this time instead, and then I'm going to put in the light buttercream. But yeah, if you want to know how to do that, just check out that tutorial. I'm going to shake down, press down that buttercream, twist the ends, and then do a test squeeze. I'm going to squeeze out onto my paper towel here, and I'm just going to squeeze enough to see both colors come through, just like that. Then using a separate piping bag with the tip cut off, I'm going to go ahead and pipe the cone right in the center of the cupcake here. End of the tip on the top and the fatter end on the bottom. We're going to go ahead and pipe the cone here with our Wilton tip. I'm just going to spin the cupcake around as I go, making sure that the tip is slightly in towards the center. And then we do 3 petals, cupping this, going down and then up and then down again, and then down, up, down, and just have a nice little rosebud right there in the center. And then I don't count the other petals as I go. This, I just make sure that I start the next petal a little bit overlapping the previous one that I pipe. And if you notice, my tip is almost exactly straight up when I get to the center of the petal. And then slowly, as I add more petals, I am making the narrow end come a little more towards me each time. So instead of going in towards the center of the cupcake, I'll have it come in towards me. And I like to wipe my tip as I go to make sure it's cleaned off, and that way you don't have smudgy petals. And now see, I'm making those petals almost flat out towards me, and the final petals I always have just about completely flat here, making sure that the narrow end is always facing out towards the outside of the cupcake. So this is my Wilton tip again. So it is slightly thicker than the Ateco tip, and that's one of the reasons why I like to use it for my beginner classes, is because they're a little easier to control. These petals are a little thicker, so you don't have to do quite as many. But for those reasons I just mentioned are actually the reasons why I like the Ateco, because I I like the fact that you have more petals. I like the fact that it's thinner and they're more realistic. So I like that for the advanced roses, but I definitely always start with the Wilton in my beginner classes. So we use the exact same approach. We pipe the cone first, and now we're going to spin around the center, moving the cupcake and then pulling down right at the end to end that centerpiece. And of course it's a lot easier on a rose nail than a cupcake, but you can still spin the cupcake. And then I cup it again with the 3 petals. Now, as you can tell, it doesn't take up quite as much space as the Wilton one did. And a couple of other things you'll notice as you pipe with the tip, I always make sure that I keep my piping bag tight as I go. So if you see me taking breaks, it's just me pushing the buttercream down and tightening the twist again to keep my buttercream nice and tight where it's supposed to be. And as I pipe these petals, you see how it curls a little bit. Now, the Wilton did a little bit, but this one gives a very definite curl at the end of the petals. And as my tip is straight up and down with the narrow end on top, it really just, you can see how it kind of falls over almost naturally. So that's why I like this Ateco tip, because I like that it gives it more of a natural looking, realistic rose. And so you get more petals, more thin, realistic petals, and yeah, I just really like this tip. But I have lots of uses for the Wilton. Obviously, I use it for my beginner roses, but there's a lot of other flowers that I like to pipe with that thicker tip too. One other thing you'll notice that I like to do with my outer petals is to give it that natural little frill there. And the way you achieve that is just by giving your piping bag a good squeeze and not moving the cupcake quite as fast. And so that it lets that buttercream build up a little more and give you a little bit of a ruffle on the edge. And I just really like that look, so I do that towards my outer petals here. And again, that's just achieved simply by applying more pressure to your piping bag and not spinning the rose quite as fast, so you're not pulling those petals taut. Okay, so there you have it. That is the buttercream rose with the Ateco tip, and it gives you a really realistic flowers. And here's the one with the Wilton tip. Both are really nice roses, but you can definitely see the difference in the 2 tips. So you decide which one you like to use. And here I'm going to show you just a few more quick piping buttercream roses. I'm going to use the Ateco tip again, and I'm just going to show you how to do a few little ones and just remove it from the rose nail. Now, I've showed this before on a tutorial that I had specifically for piping roses, and you can check that out if you want to. Those ones are the color stripe with just the gel, and pretty much the same, but I'm just showing you how to put this on a cupcake rather than anywhere else. So we're just going to spin that center one again and go ahead and pipe the petals. Now we're going to keep this rose a lot smaller than the large rose that we had covering the whole cupcake, because we wanted to have a couple of small roses on these cupcakes that I've already covered with some green buttercream. And I'm just going to lift them off and place them where I want them on the cupcake, and then we'll add a few little rosebuds to go with that and some leaves. Now, how to lift these off? Well, I'm just going to use these cake decorating scissors. They're kind of like offset scissors. I just slide it underneath, squeeze it just a little bit, lift it up, and then place it where I want it. And I'm going to use a toothpick to help me keep it in place while I pull that out. I squeezed it in and then pulled, and then you can keep it in place that way. And then I'm going to add just a couple little petals on the outside to kind of tidy that up a little bit. Then I'm going to use a number 5 writing tip, and I'm just going to pipe a bunch of little dots. And those little dots will be the base for our rosebuds. Then we're going to use a slightly smaller tip, a number 3 writing tip, and right in the center of all those green dots, we're going to pipe some pale pink dots. And so then they'll look like little rosebuds kind of. And then after we get in our rosebuds, I want to add some leaves. So we're going to use a large leaf tip. We're going to use the 366 leaf tip. It's Wilton. And we're just going to fill that in with leaves. And if you're wondering what shade of green buttercream I used the Laurel Green by Americolor. And again, the color pink that I used was deep pink. And if you want any hints at being able to make red buttercream, their super red is really easy. And I've done lots of red roses that way, and red anything else. But yeah, definitely look into Americolor if you've had trouble getting red buttercream before. So here's a quick picture of Americolor's super red. And as you can tell, I've actually color striped it with the gel food coloring. And so that's a lot of fun to try if you haven't tried it. These mini cupcake roses were also color striped with the gel food coloring, and you can check out that tutorial, and I also show you how to color stripe the bag with gel food coloring in that tutorial. So thanks for joining me today. I had a lot of fun, and I hope I helped make up your mind which tip you want to use for your cake decorating and which one maybe you don't want to use. But please subscribe to my channel, lots of fun videos.